UFO reality can no longer be denied. In 2017, the New York Times broke a front-page story about a shadowy government program.
Pentagon had this secret UFO monitoring agency which nobody knew about.
Don't ask me, because I'm not going to tell you.
Instead of answers, we've been given a new narrative. The UAPs are not ours or any foreign government's.
Then the question is, whose are they?
You can ask the questions, but who are you going to ask them of? And you've got to make sure you're asking the right people.
There are many things that are out there in the ether that aren't officially brought to our attention.
How would it have to be officially brought to your attention? I'm bringing it to your attention.
Sure.
Do you expect to see real answers in this report?
Honestly, I don't think so, Jake.
Memorable quote in that is, technology not of this earth, not made by man.
That's a profound moment.
So have you studied classified materials, but you just don't have them?
I just shouldn't say anything more.
Individuals at the Pentagon confirmed the Roswell spacecraft is real.
It's just a complete cover-up.
Some phenomena point to an interaction with consciousness.
Maybe the physical evolved from consciousness.
Life may exist in all sorts of forms. The question is, what's our definition of life?
Welcome, everybody, to AM Bite. Welcome to AB Live on this Thursday night, this Thursday, this day of Jupiter. And what you just saw was the trailer of a really amazing documentary, a documentary that I've watched, as many of you know, I've watched pretty much all of them. We've had many directors, writers, but this, I would say this is probably the best that I've seen in many years, and that is Accidental Truth, UFO Revelation. And my name is Miguel Connor. I am still your Pompadour of Gnosis, your madman across the waters of creation. And welcome, everybody, as I see you going into the chat room for what will be an incredible show. With us, we have the writer and director of Accidental Truth, and that is Ron James. Ron, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me on the show, and thanks for the kind words about the film. It's a nerve-wracking process all the way to the end, and to hear people that are actually really saying positive things about it is intensely gratifying.
Yeah, from the start. And yes, I agree. I kept watching this movie like, man, he must have had some powers from above, because you can tell the blocks and all the work you had to do for years and how it just all came together. And I'm like, he made it to the finish line. Thank God. And we got the movie, right?
Hey, there were a lot of times I didn't think I was going to make it to the finish line.
I could tell just by the amount of work and what you're able to get and the guests and the research. I was like, whoo. So yeah, kudos. Yeah, well, we definitely want to unpack this and maybe show a clip to the audience. And again, off the bat, highly recommend you get this movie. I think right now I saw you get it. What, Amazon? You can get it. Where else?
It's pretty much everywhere. It's on Amazon, Apple TV. It's number 4 on iTunes right now. And James Fox and I are in he's got the Phenomenon number 3 right now this minute. Moment of Contact is number 1. I'm number 4. And so we're kind of texting each other back and forth, kind of teasing each other about, but that's a high class problem. To joking around with your friends about how you've got 2 of the 3 2 of the top 5. But yes, so it's on Apple, it's on Microsoft, it's on Redbox. Pretty much if you go to the trailer, there's a link, and then you can do it. You can order it on Amazon, of course.
Yeah, and I've already looked. I'm seeing the rating. Of course, I'm looking at the ratings. I'm like, off the bat, it's got some really good ratings. So you're
That's
on
good,
your way.
I got review bombed coming out of the gate. There are a lot of people that As much as I try to be one of the nicest guys in ufology, I do have my detractors. And there were 6 people that went to IMDb and gave it 1 star before anybody could even watch it. And, you know, whoever those people are out there, because I'm going to run across you sooner or later, shame on you guys. That was mean.
Well, we all know that the ufology community is not and never been, you might say, together. There's always a lot of friction, inner warfare, fights. It's like anything.
I've tried to stay away from that. You know, I'm the media relations director for MUFON, and that started from me founding MUFON Television and growing that as a business partnership with them. And then, you know, they gave me that official position, and this organization has just come such a long way and moved mountains. And I'm actually very proud to be a part of it. But there's still people out there that don't agree.
Yeah, and then of course you've got all the, might as well say it, all the CIA plants and whatever, disinformation, trying to play it off, plant that, you know, that false thing to make it look bad. Same what they do in other arenas, whether it's New Age or conspiracy or anything, JFK.
It's doing okay on Amazon. I've been afraid to look because, yeah.
Yeah, I saw it look good, and what I watch is, again, good ratings. That's what gives it legs, if you know what I mean. That's what you need. You need legs.
So that's good to hear. Yeah. I'm literally, ever since the film got released, and I went in and noticed, you know, a couple of attacks, I just, you know, I don't want to subject myself to that. So I have not been watching. I've been watching the Apple chart, but I haven't looked at the reviews or the ratings or anything yet. It's just like, just need to unplug. I made the film, I put it out into the world, and it is up to the audience and the people of planet Earth to decide if it's a good contribution.
There you go. And with us, just beamed down from another planet, we've got the Moondog Vance. Vance, how are you doing? And I know you watch it too, so please give us your review.
Well, I'm out of breath from running away from the Men in Black, and I managed to escape. And by the way, hi NSA, hi CIA. I know they're watching out.
Gang's all here, of course. Yeah,
gang's all here. I thought it was very well produced and very professional, and it really brought home the point that the government has changed its tune, and so you got to wonder. And that's the one point. And everybody knows that, but it's nice to see it really spelled out in front of you. And the other point, which is something, Miguel, I've said on this show and to you privately, is that for all they've said, there is so much that, you know, they can't say. If they, for example, if they had an operational craft or even pieces of a craft that they could reverse engineer, and they managed to have any success at it, it would be totally classified, SCI, blah, 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 because you wouldn't want anybody else, you know, outside the country to get the secrets that they're hopefully getting. So we know, you know, whatever, it's the tip of the iceberg. And there's the accidental truth. There's something called OPSEC in the classified world, where they take unclassified material and you draw the lines between it, and you wind up with more than they're telling you. And I think this accidental truth is exactly that. It's really, there's a big arrow pointing out to, you know, what might really be, but who knows? They'll never tell us. They'll never tell us the whole thing.
We will never understand the whole truth. But the thrust of accidental truth is that when they came out in 2018 with this new story about how, you know, oh, well, Project Blue Book ended and there's been nothing going on until the stuff with Robert Bigelow started and evolved into ATIP. Accidental Truth is about blowing that story out of the water and giving people a really solid idea of what was going on for those years, who was doing it, what they discovered. And, you know, the reason they're doing it, I call it the new narrative, and so are others. They're doing it because they've got to remove accountability, and they've got to be able to roll out the story that this stuff exists, but they've got to do it in such a way that they can whitewash the sins of the past. And so that's what we're seeing. And I didn't leave a lot of breathing room for anybody in this film.
No, not at all.
It's not deserved, you know, not deserved.
Yeah. So what is that? Tell the audience why you call it accidental truth.
Well, it's a double entendre in a lot of ways. It's kind of a play on the fact that that these crashes that we know were happened, that was accidental, but that's not the real meaning. The meaning of accidental truth is because as I say in the beginning of the film, I'm sitting with these guys that have run secret programs, interrogated terrorists, held closely guarded secrets for a living, and all I can think about is getting them to tell me something they don't want me to know. And that's what the whole film's about, and they do. There's slip ups in this film that are in there, and when you watch them, we don't call anybody in the film dishonest. We don't denigrate anybody. It's not a mean-spirited film, but you can clearly tell that people aren't telling us the truth while they're talking. And if you watch it 2 or 3 times, you realize that there's a lot of dishonest answers. But it's the slip-ups. It's the things like when I asked, that's in the trailer. Well, when I'm interviewing Gary Nolan, he did 2 different interviews with 2 different people where he said 2 different things. And I said, well, Gary, you told Lex Friedman that you didn't get any materials from the government, but then you told Jesse Michaels, I think is his name, that you couldn't show him stuff because it was classified. So have you studied classified materials? And he's like, yeah, I can't say anymore. It's hilarious. And there's several poignant moments like that in the movie. So that's why it's accidental truth. And then the poster art itself is really very symbolic. People can't see the whole thing because of the title graphics, but built into the title, we have these animated drips that come down. That represents the slow drip of disclosure. And then built into the word, you see truth and denial. And that's really what it's all about, is that you're receiving truth through denial. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I walked a very fine line making this film. Everybody that's in it, and people might have their opinions about the cast and different people. I think that I told people, look, you're still going to be talking to me when this is over. And so far, most of them are. So even though it's we're not playing softball with any of these guys, obviously. But, I came to respect over time the fact that a lot of these people are duty bound. They're patriots. They're doing the right thing despite, whatever the opinion is. Maybe they're still working. Maybe they're still part of an ongoing op, probably. But, at the end of the day, they're not. It doesn't make them bad people.
No, not at all. And yes, for the audience, there are several of these amazing scenes in the movie where he catches them and so forth. But tell us about the process of making Accidental Truth and how it came about.
Well, I've made several UFO documentaries. I won the EBE Awards in 2012 for a film called The Disclosure Dialogues. And of course I've produced, I own MUFON TV, so I make those shows. But I always knew that sooner or later I was going to make a big UFO film. But I didn't want to do it until I really thought I could move the ball, because we see there's a lot of these films come out. They're either packed with things that really can't be verified. So they attract a certain crowd that wants to drink the Kool-Aid, and that's okay. But I didn't want to do that. But real legitimate information is hard to come by. And so it was when I did the interview with Lue Elizondo, when he made the comment that's in the film. That's when I realized that I had something, and I really thought I could build a whole film just around that interview. But then as I brought it to 1091's attention, and they did a contract deal with me to produce the film sight unseen. They just by my reputation for my previous work and my concept, they agreed to be the distributor, which was amazing. And so then I started thinking, well, I want this to be bigger and better. So the Post-it notes on my wall are going on 2 years old now. But since then, that's when I got Michio Kaku. That's when I brought in Ralph Blumenthal from the New York Times. That's when I brought in Dr. Gary Nolan. So I brought some real heavy hitters to this thing that are doing things that they've never done before and saying things that they have not said. And so it just kept getting bigger and bigger. But then at the end of it, the Post-it notes on my wall from 2 years ago, it's still the same movie that I envisioned. And it just evolved over time. And then, when we got Matthew Modine to come in and narrate, that was huge. We originally had Edward James Olmos, and he backed out. We were trying to get Steven Tyler.
Captain Adama from Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, he was my second choice. I wanted Steven Tyler, but he went into rehab right as his people were talking to my people, so to speak. And then we had Eddie, but I think his lawyer scared him because we literally had written the contract and sent it to him, and then they came back and he's going to pass. But Matthew Modine turned out to be just an absolute blessing. He loves the film. He's helping us to promote it, and the synergy between him and I doing it. I went to, we didn't do it remotely. I went to New York City and sat in the studio with him for 2 days, and we recorded the voiceover. And he was very, he's like, who says this kind of thing? Because there's a lot of tongue twister technical things in the film, and it was really funny. But he was super great to work with, and he gave me a really decent rate in exchange for giving him some executive producer credits that he wanted. And so now, the conversation now is be careful what you wish for, because people are going to be like, Matthew Modine, what did he do? Oh yeah, Accidental Truth, Full Metal what? Stranger what?
Private Joker. Private, that's what I remember him as, Private Joker. But yeah, most people think of him as Papa from Stranger Things.
Well, it's funny.
It fits in with the movie.
Here's a weird synergy about that. So we have a guy who played a scientist running a top secret program, really narrating a movie that's about government people running top secret programs. And then he's going to be in the new movie that's coming out, Oppenheimer. He has a role in that. And guess who he's playing?
Who?
He's playing Vannevar Bush.
Oh my
who
God.
arguably was a member of MJ12, if there was an MJ12.
Yeah.
So it's just hilarious, that little synergy. It's really funny. And one day the recording studio didn't open. We got there early, so we went and had breakfast, and I was telling him about the whole MJ12 thing, and he just thought it was hilarious. So
did the pandemic have any disruptions making this movie?
No, because it was pretty much over. When the pandemic hit, I had my 90, she was 92 at the time, 92-year-old mother ended up in the emergency room, and I had to take her out of her house, and I had a really big house in LA, so it was no problem. I put her in my guest house, and then the pandemic hit, and I'm like, okay, I'm in Los Angeles. Nobody knows how it's going to come out. I was there the day the big hospital ship pulled into LA Harbor, and I'm just like, oh man. So I decided to boogie out to Sedona. So I bought a house out here where she could have her own guest house and be comfortable. I didn't have to worry about her dying of COVID or anything else. So that's what I did. And it was shortly after I got the place in Sedona, and I still have my TV studio in LA. So I go back and forth. I have the studio that I own out there, but it was right after COVID that we started work in earnest.
Good deal. And just out of curiosity, when did you become interested in UFOs, and have you had a UFO experience? I'm pretty open. I've had two. I've described them. I can't say it was something not of this earth, but that's where I am. How about you, Ron?
Well, I've always been interested in the topic, even, growing up, and guys like Stanton Friedman on TV, and Nick Pope, when he used to write that, he was still in the British Ministry of Defense, and he had a column in UFO magazine. I used to read that, and I was really a fan of these guys that were legit, that were giving credence to the topic. Stanton Friedman was a scientist, and when he talked, it was something that you could listen to that wasn't going to be so easily dismissed. And Nick Pope was the same way back then, and he still is. He's in the film, and he's been very good to me over the years. But Steve Bassett hired me to produce one of his X conference, because I had a video production company. I still do. And, I've done a lot of video work, a lot of music stuff, Smashing Pumpkins, Guns N' Roses, Earth, Wind and Fire. So my company does that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But he hired me to produce and live stream his X conference, and later the citizen hearing on disclosure. But it was at that conference when I got to meet these people that it really came to my attention that we're dealing with the biggest deception ever perpetrated on humanity. And I basically had decided at that time that I would like to do something about it. And it was like 15 years ago. And so I started making films and I started interviewing people. And I have this drawer of hard drives. I mean, there must be 50 of them, full of unpublished interviews of people, Edgar Mitchell, some people that are passed away, Jim Mars. Anyway, just a ton of people that still haven't seen the light of day. And so when I decided to pitch Accidental Truth to the distributor, it was I knew what I was sitting on, and I knew kind of pretty much what I was going to do. And then I decided that I wanted to learn how to do 3D animation. So I did a crash course in that. I hired some people from the Ukraine to help. So, you know, all the animations in the film, some of them are stock footage, but most of them are original that me and my guys in Ukraine created. And they were sending me pictures of missiles flying over their place. When one day it'd be like, hey, are we going to get that shot? Oh, no, they blew up the power plant. You know, it's like, God. And these guys worked through all this and continued to deliver material.
Wow. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Wow. Well, glad it happened indeed. And I guess, Vance, do you have questions for Ron about the movie? Because I know you, I'm sure you do.
Yeah, one thing I was wondering.
Cathartic. It was so cathartic because, yeah, the frustration. I was like, oh, thank God I'm watching this movie because.
Yeah, Lue Elizondo. I was wondering, has he ever shown you his DD-214? You know, that showed that he was at least in the military, because I've read a lot of things about, you know, that he won't tell, you know, he doesn't provide documentation as to what he was doing. Now the ATIP, you know, is one thing, but go ahead.
Yeah. So there was a time when Lue Elizondo was working very closely with MUFON and the TTSA guys. And we've been through all of that with him. And something that people don't really understand is that there was a lot of civilian contracting happening within the military. Entire intelligence wings are civilian contractors.
Oh, always.
And so, you know, a lot of his career is that, and then a lot of his career is classified. But, you know, these people that say that he wasn't there, you know, we kind of covered that in the film. We talk about how they tried to disavow him, and we talk about the work that he's done. You know, he hired Danny Sheehan, and they went after the Defense Intelligence Agency for discrediting him. And everybody had to walk back the stuff they've said. And the other thing you have to realize is that you are never a retired intelligence guy when you're at that level. Okay. And you know, let's call a spade. I'm not saying that, you know, he's actively still conducting some kind of op, because I could not say that factually. But what I am saying is that, you know, he's doing his job, and that's a job that never ends. So was he actually in the military? I mean, unless he just flew over there to Iraq and shot pictures of himself just to put on a hoax. No, he was in the military, and then he was working for civilian agencies outside the military for the military. And I don't think that people are going to gain a lot of traction trying to discredit that.
Yeah, I was just wondering. And what was it like with Michio Kaku? Did he send you footage, or how was that interaction?
No, I went to New York. This is so funny, but when some of my first videos were called the Bigger Question series, and that's the name of one of my shows too. But I had gone to in the late 90s, I'd gone to New Mexico and interviewed who were all the key great scientists of the time: Amit Goswami, Bill Tiller, Dean Radin, you know, just this huge list of people that were on the cutting edge of reality stuff. Russell Targ, I interviewed Russell Targ. I interviewed his daughter. She's gone, I think. But the one guy that was on my list that I didn't get all those years ago was Michio Kaku, because I couldn't, he was hard to get. And so for this, I'm like, oh, I gotta try. So Chris O'Brien, who people would probably know best for his cattle mutilations books, him and I have made several films together, and he came to help me with this. And I'm like, dude, I don't care what else you do, get me Dr. Kaku. So we pounded it. It's like we're emailing him, we're finding out his other emails, we're calling him at New York City University, and finally, you know, we sent him some dollar signs, and he got back, and it wasn't much, but it was the week of my birthday, January 16th, and I'm in New York, and it was the day before my birthday, and I rented a studio in New York with a green screen, and I'm sitting for 2 hours eye to eye, 5 feet away from Dr. Michio Kaku, and I'm like, that's the best birthday present I ever had. And then Ralph Blumenthal came the next day, and after the interview with Ralph, he autographed a book for me, and I didn't look at it at first, but when I got back to the hotel, I looked to see what he wrote. And he actually wrote, "Ron, you're a terrific interviewer. Thanks, Ralph." And I mean, coming from that guy, Pulitzer Prize winning bastion of journalism, to have him say that. So that was a week of my birthday, and it just couldn't have been better.
Fantastic. How about other people? You know, Linda Moulton Howe. Did you approach her to be in the film, or what? How'd that?
Well, you know, I've known Linda for a long time, and I've interviewed her several times, and I just didn't have a place to get her in. There's very little room for commentary, and as the film was spliced together, I wanted to use some stuff that I had with her, but then it just didn't work.
Yeah. Okay.
And Linda and I are great friends. We hung out at Alien Con together, did tequila shots, so that was pretty
That was always Art's part.
Or you know what? It wasn't Alien. I was at Alien Con. I spoke at Alien Con, but it was at the Parapod, the world's first Parapod convention, and I won the very first Parapod award for best feature documentary. So
cool.
Accidental Truth has won 9 different awards, including this is the award of excellence from the Accolade Film Competition. Get a little trophy with stars all over it. That's pretty cool.
How about a trophy with UFOs on top of it? Do you get one of those?
No, but the Parapod one has the alien.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
that's true.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, Vince, they're UAPs. Get with the marketing.
I know, right?
You know what? I'm mad about that, because they deliberately did that, because they trashed the term UFO.
Right.
They did it. They trashed it, and they said, "Well, no, there's no UFOs, but there are UAPs." That's part of that's part of this whole switcheroo thing that the government did. But
this is the Indie Fest. We won 2. We won the award of excellence for narration and for feature documentary. So there's 9 altogether.
Very cool.
And before it even came out.
Well, what do you think of Art's parts? You remember that? Supposing when people sent them and they analyzed it and so forth, would that be, in your opinion, evidence of material taken from extraterrestrial craft?
Well, one of the things that Lou points out, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of watching the chat. Maybe I shouldn't do that. There's a couple of people asking some questions.
I'm doing it too. If you want,
I don't know what you mean by farmers. I mean, Chris Mellon's in it. There's a lot of people that are in it. Colonel John Alexander is in it, and he's going to tell you things in Accidental Truth that are just going to blow you away, because here's a guy who the whole time he was front facing and interacting with the UFO community, talking about how there's nothing to any of this as far as the government's concerned. He was, running one of those programs. So, and he
was
admits
he was my favorite guest. He was very stoic, sense of humor, very practical. And I love that quote where he says, "The good news is the government's telling us the truth. The bad news is that the government's telling us the truth." I was like, oh, this guy's been around.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that is it even government anymore? If this stuff really happened back in Roswell, a special group, MJ-12 or something like them, was set aside to have very little accountability to anyone. And then this whole disinformation campaigns and lies were engineered. And so what we have is something that goes back to 70 years, and it's been sequestered and compartmentalized. And there may very well be no institutional memory of any of this. And one thing that I was very shocked of in the process of making the film is that the government and the military, these guys have no problem literally destroying stuff that should have historical value. Like the film from the Blue Room, we finally found out that it did exist.
Oh, wow.
But it was destroyed, supposedly. So the idea that we have some big warehouse, Indiana Jones style, Raiders of the Lost Ark style, where all this stuff is stored, maybe we don't, and it would be a tragedy and a terrible thing to think that, evidence has been destroyed like that. But I think a significant amount of it has.
I'll bet the NRO has tons of stuff. They scour the earth with their satellites, and who knows what they have seen. And I'll bet you they don't throw that stuff away.
Well, what's interesting is here we are with another set of hearings, and here we are with this thing that just happened with the Chinese weather balloon, and we're actually being asked to believe that we don't know what's in our airspace. I mean, maybe maybe we've got these sensors turned down so they don't pick up little tiny, drones and experimental stuff. But we know that there's all kinds of programs to track UFOs. We know they do it at NORAD, and they probably have entire offices that are set up just to monitor these craft. And so the idea that we don't know, that's pretty rough.
Yeah, it's incredible. Well, awesome.
Well, look, here's a cult fan trashing MUFON. Dude, you shouldn't do that. The fact of the matter is the MUFON's come a really long way, and it's the world's best, largest, oldest, greatest organization studying the UFO topic. So chill, man.
Good.
Well, let's play a clip. Oh, and for the audience, I think by now you're gonna start throwing like virtual fruit at me, but I have to mention my Elvis bio. For the record, Elvis had 5 UFO encounters, 3 are verifiable, 4 are verifiable, and he was right there. And there's many people that later betrayed him, but they were like, no, this shit was going on. So interesting too that the king himself met the ambassadors of other planets. But here, let's play a clip, Ron, because again, it's just a cool movie. Advanced technology is only about a minute. Here we go.
In March of 2022, the Defense Intelligence Agency responded to another FOIA request that demanded information about the work of ATIP and its previous versions. The result was 1,500 pages that included 38 independent papers about potential advanced technology. Some of the technologies that were explored include advanced nuclear propulsion for manned deep space missions. Many of these technologies are beyond the realm of current science. These technologies are discussed as if someone knows that they are entirely possible.
Machinery really does exist. It does exist. The problem has been the inability to back engineer. And I kind of think that some things require a weightless environment.
Very cool. Well, tell us about that clip. And yeah, now we come to the defense. Graham Pong he's defending MUFON. And there you go.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. It's the oldest civilian organization, so you do make a good point. So the government came out with these DIRDs, the Defense Intelligence Agency reports that were written. A lot of people are debunking them. They're saying, well, yeah, this is all came out of ATIP and the crazy stuff at Skinwalker. They're chasing werewolves, blah, 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 blah. Okay, whatever. But, and they were studying some pretty occult, weird stuff at Skinwalker. That's a given. But these DIRDs are reports of 1,500 pages, 50 or so technologies that, we don't have. And Michio Kaku steps in during this, and we start looking at individual technologies. Is this possible? Could we even do it? Well, yeah, it's possible, maybe in 100,000 years. So what we're dealing with, in my opinion, is that there's been a great deal of research at the corporate industrial level on these technologies ever since we started realizing that these advanced craft were happening. And they used the OSOP program and later ATIP as a way to bubble this stuff up into the public vernacular. So these reports, a lot of people will say, well, they're not reports. They're just, there's nothing to them. Hal Puthoff wrote them and that kind of thing. Yeah, maybe. But the fact is that they've got to get the possibility of these technologies into the vernacular. So they've done that with these releases. And a few months before that, they released, very few people paid attention to it, but the DIA released the materials stuff. It had a directed mission that these were reports about materials that were recovered as flotsam, shot off debris from unidentified flying objects, and were studied in the Bigelow Aerospace and other facilities. And then because of who was involved in obtaining those reports, a lot of people didn't like the guy, and so they pounced on him. But the Freedom of Information Act response is what it is. And it is not something that you can deny. They answered the question. And then we start looking at the technologies that they bring to our attention, especially materials. And we're able to trace the origin of these materials through the smoke screen of where they say the materials came from, and find out that they actually came from a completely different place a long time earlier. And coincidentally, one of them comes out of a company that was under contract to do materials work for Wright-Patterson. But the official story of where that material came from is not that.
Yeah, it's incredible. So if do you have a stance on UFOs or aliens? For example, I lean towards John Keel and the ultra-terrestrials. That works for me. Sometimes Jacques Vallée and the sort of the Nine or the Council or the college, if you would. Where do you stand, Ron?
I think that, as we state in the film, there's a lot of different possibilities, and I think that it's probably going to end up being all of the above. There are, there probably, it's a great possibility that there is an ultra-terrestrial species here that has learned that living on the surface of the planet is a dangerous gamble, and could be completely advanced, maybe under Antarctica, under the ocean, who knows. But so there's a case for that. And then there's also a case for extraterrestrials that are aliens from other planets. And then, of course, when you start talking about interdimensional stuff and other life forms that don't even match our definition of life, I think all of these things are possible. And it's really going to take all of these things combined to kind of explain everything we're seeing. So as John told me, I don't know if I used it in the movie, but, he said, we're not even at the stage where we're asking the right questions yet. And I think that, we're going to learn a lot about our physical reality as we start seeing these things happen.
Good point. Yeah, I think it was Thomas Pynchon said, if they can get you asking the wrong questions, they don't have to worry about the answers, which our government has done very well. Yeah, and you've got Richard Dolan, who I've followed for years and love the idea of a breakaway civilization. I don't care what anybody says. I love the movie Iron Skies with the Nazis and on the other side of the moon.
Yeah.
So,
in submarines.
In submarine writing.
Here's the thing about all that stuff. I can say maybe, but in what I did with Accidental Truth, I wanted to make sure that there was as solid a journalistic approach as there can be. And so I didn't want to speculate on things. Everything in the film that we present has a paper trail and some kind of scientific backing. It's like, what Lou said about these materials. We all know what's in the periodic table. It's consistent throughout the universe. I'm sure there's materials that we haven't discovered yet, but if you get a metallurgy sample, you can analyze it. You can tell what it's made of. But in a lot of these things, it's these isotopic ratios that throw everything off, because that is, created during the formation of these materials. And some of these materials are testing with isotopic ratios that cannot be replicated on planet Earth. And that is science. And it's true. It's the truth. It's just like, we don't cover it in the film, but, it's just like John Brandenburg and his radiation on Mars. Nobody's been able to refute that. The radiation that they're finding in the atmosphere of Mars only comes from a nuclear explosion or a supernova. It's the only two known factors in the universe that can affect it. And if it came from a supernova sweeping radiation into the solar system, it would be everywhere. It wouldn't just be in the atmosphere of Mars. And nobody's got an answer for that one. John says Mars was nuked. That is kind of hard to. Nobody's been able to debunk him.
I forget about
I always thought
that theory. It's the most mind-boggling. It's one of those things that you'll wake up at night, or you'll be laying there like, holy shit, he's right.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And for those of you in the chat, again, if you have any questions, please super chat them. And of course, if Ron wants to deal with one of y'all, he can do that. Here we are. We are free.
I'm not trying to pick fights in the chat room. I just think that You know, MUFON as an organization has done more for ufology than any organization ever. We still have the largest database in the world, and it's had its ups and downs. It's been kicked around by other people, and it's had its internal flaws, but it's still there and it's stronger than ever. And people, you know, I just hate to see when people do it, because it's an all volunteer organization of people that dedicate their time and their money to keep doing this work. And so at the core of it, no matter what you want to say about it, it's the most dedicated people in ufology, bar none.
Good deal. Good deal. So my question would be, why did the government do what it's doing exactly? I'm sure. I mean, I want to hear your take on it and your angles on it, because for me, they've almost made it boring. If one thing the government can do is sort of sap that excitement and and vibrancy and dynamism out of something.
Well, you know, there's something to be said for publicly taking this approach of, well, we're going to focus on the military stuff because military pilots are very highly credible, and we have track record of sensor readings, and we're able to document this stuff from a bunch of different standpoints. But the hardest thing of all of it is, I mean, you guys have been doing this for 50 years, and you're lying to us, and you're telling us you're just now thinking about it. I think the funniest thing that I laughed about it for a whole day when NASA came out and said that they were going to start taking a look at the possibility of UFOs. It's like, really? And so, what these guys are doing, and we pointed out in the film, this is an old script. We had military officers reading the exact same stuff in the 50s. Mm-hmm. And when you see it, what did you think of that, Miguel, when you saw the General Sanford compared to Elizondo and Bray and Moultrie side by side, repeating almost the same exact lines? I know. I mean, they could have at least hired a better screenwriter, right?
That was pure genius. Yeah, it's like... But the problem, they've gotten tired. I think that's my point. They're still using the same playbook, but we're faster, we're more nimble, and we can see through their BS. So
and see
it's
if
almost
they can
like, why are
the
you
story.
doing it?
What they have to do, the mission of all of this, and when people argue, there's a little bit of the debate in the film about whether 2017 was an organized rollout or if it happened organically. Right. The only thing I could say, because Ralph Blumenthal, who wrote the story, he's like, no, it was all circumstance and coincidence. But it's no coincidence that the TTSA was already organized, put together, contracts were in place, the organization was formed, the legal paperwork was done. That wasn't a coincidence that it comes out in the New York Times, and a week later, Tom DeLonge's on stage with these guys announcing, the next step. But what they're doing is they've got the general story to the public has to be that, this stuff, the last 50 years didn't happen, and that this is all fresh and new. And now they're going to tell us whatever information they want to tell us, and they're going to act like we're all discovering it together. But we're not going to let them. And that's what Accidental Truth is about, is not letting them retell the story and whitewash the past.
Exactly, yeah, and you certainly bring that all throughout, definitely all throughout the movie. You want to make sure we're on to you and we know what's going on. So it's Vance, any question from you, the audience?
Well, Chester had one. Also, I wanted to say that my theory is that the government has courses that these people take that teach them what to say in public.
Well, we know that is absolutely true. It didn't make it into the film, but we actually have a letter of talking points that was sent from a retired guy, colonel, to Susan Guff at the Pentagon on how to respond to the questions about the materials cases, what to say, what not to say, and where to refer the stuff. And, Nick Pope has told me before, I have a great interview of him where he's talking about the things that he was trained on as far as averting questions. Like he'll say, oh, well, I'm very, very glad you asked that question. And then you don't answer it. Right. and so there's all these things it's called media training. And yes, these guys go through this, and anybody that's front facing has gone through it, and they all know how to handle this stuff. The Freedom of Information Act response regarding the materials slipped through the cracks. Mostly because the guy Anthony Bragalia is controversial inside ufology, but he threatened the Defense Intelligence Agency guy, whose name was Tominski, for 2 years, threatened him with lawsuits and everything else. And this guy finally, I mean, he acquiesced and said, "Okay, here you go. Here's materials that here's, you know, it was 400 pages of reports, maybe, of materials, and some of which we still don't know what they are."
Wow.
May induce invisibility. What's funny about the materials reports is that they talk about these things and speculating about what use they might have. You know, like metallic glass. People have seen transparent aluminum remember back in the Star Trek movie, and we're all, "Oh yeah, that might be pretty cool. Yeah, wow, what's that?" Well, it was a real thing. We had it. It had been developed by a company and patented by Raytheon way back in the 60s, and then ported forward to another company, and now we have transparent metal. But when they did that thing in Star Trek, nobody knew that was a real thing, that we really had it, but we did. And the way they made it, it was back engineered. The entire manufacturing process was back engineered, and it's very easy to make that point. And then they have other materials. They don't know what they are. What industry do we have that will create a material at great expense and then try to figure out what to do with it?
No. No. Now this brings up Colonel Philip Corso, who also didn't appear in the film. What's the story with that? Because talk about materials.
Well, you know, the thing is that there's a lot of controversy around Corso, and the whole thing's been addressed. I was just really careful to not put in stuff that is going to be super easy to debate. Everything is backed by some sort of evidence. Philip Corso wrote this book with Bill Burns. There's a lot of controversy around the book itself. There is a lot of controversy around some of the technologies that Corso describes. You know, for instance, we already know that night vision was a thing back as early as World War II. So to say we got it off an alien spaceship, there have been very, very good evidentiary chains that some of these materials that he says came from Roswell we had already. And so I didn't want to put it in there because I didn't want to reignite that debate. And there was enough stuff in there that people don't know about that does have a pedigree that is questionable and provable.
Okay, great answer. Poor Chester is waiting for his answer. Speaking.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was it?
No, not your fault. It's my fault. I railroaded you off to the side. He wanted to know if there are other formers in the film besides Lue.
Oh, I thought that said farmers.
Yeah, he said it's formers.
Well, I mean, you know, Chris Mellon's in it, accidentally admitting something very, very big that I don't think he meant to say. You know, for all of you that are curious about the Chris Mellon interview, it's a Zoom interview, so it's not like as well shot as the rest of the stuff in the film. But I point blank asked him, after he came out, I said, "Well, Chris, we got two problems. The first problem is you came out in the Washington Post saying that the U.S. government had no interest in UFOs, and that was your official stance. But you were the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence under, I think, 2 administrations. And we have a mountain of evidence that is just not true. So how do you reconcile that and expect us to still, want to believe the things that you say?" And his answer is absolutely spellbinding, absolutely stunning. And Miguel, you've seen it. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And so, yes, there are some farmers. Yeah, those guys.
If the aliens are the farmers, they're farming us. All right.
There are those who believe that.
Well, what did Whitley Strieber say? We make a big mistake. Like you're talking about, Ron, we need to ask the right questions. He always said, they're not embedded with us. We're embedded with them. We need to find out. We need to realize who's the little guy in this whole thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah, he's going to watch it tonight. He also wanted to know if you're familiar with Jason Giorgiani's meta hypothesis about UFOs.
Oh, he's following up. So Lue still has his clearance, and so does Chris. So he had to fight to keep it. Literally going to hiring lawyers and going into the Defense Intelligence Agency. But the last I heard, Lue still has his clearance, and and I'm sure Chris still has his clearance. So yes. I'm sorry. Go ahead and ask the
Yeah, about Jason Giorgiani. Do you know about Jason Giorgiani? And he wrote a book on UFOs recently, and he was wondering if you are familiar with him and his meta hypothesis.
I saw that, but I'm not familiar with with his hypothesis. But can you outline it for me, because it might tie in with something that I actually am familiar with.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it. I read the book, but I can't remember exactly what it was.
I mean, I'm pretty convinced that we're living in some kind of a simulation. And
he's got Gnostic on us. Ron's got.
Well, no, think about this. If
hey, I believe that. Don't worry, you're preaching to the choir here.
And the question of, hey, are they little green men from Zeta Reticuli? Do they live inside the planet? Are they interdimensional? All those questions really become micro if you're not looking at the macro. If we're living in a simulation, all of those things can be true. And if they're not true right now, whoever's running it can make a quick keystroke and bam, bam, bam. So, and then if you look at what we already agree on as far as physics, it's understood and acknowledged by science that these solid objects around us are not really here. They're energy vibrating at a certain frequency. Our brains are interpreting these vibrations and creating the illusion of matter. Well, what is that? That's a simulation. And then if you look at the way the universe works, it's all based on very simple mathematical forms. Fibonacci sequence, pi. It's a program. So even if you're not like, oh, I'm plugged into some matrix or something, the way our physical reality works is the same way the artificial realities that we're designing ourselves work. And so, yeah, it's a simulation.
I hear. Yeah, I think with Jason is the idea of, I believe it was either the Prussians or before the Nazis, that these Nordics found time travel and space travel, and then they went back to Atlantis and this and that. It's sort of the Nordic theory, but he expands it upon them. So,
yeah, I didn't remember that.
Here's the thing. There's a lot of speculation and stuff that just has to live in the gray box. Do you guys have time for a little joke? I'll tell you a story.
Yeah. Sure.
I have a standard that I have a standard that I apply, and I jokingly call it the Midwest bar test. So you're driving through the Midwest, you decide you're going to pull into a bar. It's out in the middle of nowhere. Bunch of guys, families, they're all sitting around watching a football game or something. Salt of the earth, average rural Americans. And you walk in there, and somehow or another, the conversation about UFOs come up, and they're curious. So they gather around you and they say, well, what can you tell us? And you say, well, there's a lot of evidence that interaction with some kind of non-human intelligence goes back as far as recorded history. And there's a good argument for that. They're all like, yeah, okay. And then you say, and there's a ton of evidence that the government knows a lot more than they're telling us. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, yeah, okay. And about this time, one of them buys you a beer. And then you say, and it's going to be hard to find a scientist nowadays that doesn't agree that there's probably life in outer space. And everybody says, oh, heck yeah, and they give you your beer and you're making new friends. And then you say, oh yeah, and when I was 10 years old, I was age regressed and taken up into a spaceship, and then I was suddenly 30 years old, and then I went and fought giant spiders on Mars, and then I came back in a space submarine, and I woke up in my bed when it was all over after 20 years the same night. Now all of a sudden you're getting dragged out of the bar, you're getting the beer they bought you broke over your head, and you're never going back there again. So I don't want to make films that don't pass the Midwest bar test, because there's too many other people out there selling crazy, unprovable stories that maybe they happened. Mm-hmm. I'm not denigrating anybody's accounts. And if we're living in a simulation, anything's possible. But I don't want to put out stuff that doesn't make that kind of sense.
No, it makes sense.
So the Midwest bar test is my joking standard. It passed the Midwest bar test.
Yeah. It doesn't get anywhere to make a film full of speculations and so forth. Anybody could say anything,
people have
right?
built entire franchises on it. I'm not going to name names, but Accidental Truth is really about what can we prove and what can we make a good case for, and can we move the ball forward in any significant way. And I feel like I made a film that does that. It literally will move the ball a little bit down the field instead of just being another hour and a half that you can spend because you dig UFO videos.
Yeah, I guess just go watch, if you want all the possibilities, go watch Rick and Morty or something like that. Or
hey, Chester, I'm not mentioning names.
Oh, I see. I'm not going to say the name too. Yeah, that's a perfect name.
And besides, I kind of I blended several stories into one. Just
exactly. And
any resemblance to anybody living or dead is strictly coincidental.
I thought it was great that you got Bob Bigelow on there. For years I used to listen to him on Art Bell, but I'd never seen him, and I didn't know that he had a module in the space station. That was pretty cool.
Well, Bigelow's an important part of the story, and the interview that we used was actually conducted by George Knapp. And when I asked George to let me use the clip, I offered to license it from him, and he was like, no. And I'm like, but dude, this is the story. I got to tell it. And so I hired a fair use attorney, and yeah, George is going to be pissed off.
Don't meet him at a bar in the Midwest, I guess.
Well, it's funny because I ran into him and Jeremy Corbell at Alien Con, and we were hanging out for a minute, and it was really cool. And then George came by and actually bought. I wanted to give him one of the shirts for free. He came by and bought one. And if I had anything to say to George about the fact that happened, it's that I hope you respect the fact that this is a piece of investigative journalism, and I just had to tell my story, and I don't think he's going to be mad. I think that he's cool.
He could be kind of gruff, though. I ran into him at a UFO conference. He was sitting at a bar with Jaime Maussan. Jaime was the greatest guy. He was so nice. George, I was like,
Jaime Maussan is how I started MUFON Television. Paula Harris hired me to MC her conference in Laughlin, and I was backstage. And Jaime Maussan had set up a laptop, and he was streaming the conference. He tapped into our video feed and stuff because I was doing. I think I was helping with the AV, or I was doing it. I can't remember. But and one of the high ups in MUFON was there, and I had just met them for the first time, and we're all standing around watching Jaime stream. And Jaime goes, "Oh, you guys should be doing something like this." And I looked over at the guy, and I said, yeah. So I actually went up to my hotel. I registered MUFONtelevision.com as a website. I came back, and after 6 months of negotiation, we had a deal, and we created MUFON TV. I built it, but it was all because of Jaime. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, he's great. I'll always remember him.
At the same time, do you get a little bit of you might say enjoyable Schadenfreude, because 5, 6 years ago, all three of us were the kooks, the hippies, the woo-woo New Agers, and now the skeptics are having to sort of at least backtrack and have their foots in their mouth, and they're the ones that have to come up with some amazing, extreme explanations to go against the government narrative. It's like it's been flipped. We're vindicated in a way.
There are a lot of people out there that I think feel way more vindicated than me personally. Mm-hmm. I've always erred on the side of, what's logical and what can we make a reasonable case for. And MUFON is about the scientific understanding of the phenomenon. So I've never been out on a limb being mocked, but the vindication for the entire field, and plus what we're doing in Washington, D.C., we could talk about that if you want.
Sure.
This vindication is it's going to get better. Although they're trying to make it worse, but it's going to get better.
Yeah, but they do. I mean, some of these, as Jeff Kripal calls them, they're not skeptics. They're professional debunkers, and they will. I mean, like Dean, you mentioned Dean Radin, and some of the stuff they come up against him, even though his experiments, his data sound, they're like bending reality to just to marginalize them. So they'll bend reality like any fundamentalist. But oh well.
Yeah. So I was actually on a show that was largely Christian fundamentalists talking about the UFO thing. And I'm like, look, the Vatican's already come out and said that, extraterrestrial life doesn't threaten spiritual belief. And these guys are like, well, yeah, but they're angels or demons. I'm like, that might be true, but there's probably other things too. We will pray for you. I was shocked. I'm like, come on, man, at least be open-minded enough. I'm open-minded with you. You should be open-minded with other people, because the closed-mindedness is what creates this cognitive dissonance that causes these divisions and makes us, impossible to agree on stuff. We need to understand that the universe has a quantum nature to it, and that quantum nature is that positive and negative can exist in the same space at the same time, and that applies through everything. We have collective consensus reality where we all agree that we're living under blue skies and the grass is green and water's wet, and then we have subjective reality where we're all living our own version of it, but it still has to jive.
No, well said, and I would agree. And why don't you mention what are you doing in Washington? Washington upcoming?
Well, we've been in Washington. MUFON has been working with a lobbying group called A10 and Associates, Jessica Taco. This woman has moved mountains for us in Washington. We've had over 300 meetings with sitting members of Congress. We are now supplying quarterly reports about worldwide UFO sightings directly to both intelligence committees. And the hearings with Andre Carson, I personally 2 months ago had lunch with Andre Carson, and believe me, there was nothing I didn't tell him. And I have video of me sitting in Congressman Tim Burchett's office that is not part of the film, but the whole interview, at the very beginning, I set it up with 2 cameras. I lined him out on everything, going all the way back to Roswell up until now, and it's on tape. And so, a lot of people are saying, oh yeah, we're doing stuff in Washington, but we can actually prove it. The hearings that Andre Carson chaired, we were very responsible for helping to get those done. And we had some influence on the languaging for the Defense Act that opened it up for whistleblowers and held the military accountable. There was some specific language in that we were able to influence and help change. And so MUFON's been behind the scenes in DC getting stuff done. It's been very, very exciting to be a part of it.
Speaking of DC, what's your take on Stephen Greer and his disclosure project?
I just got an email from Greer's people today. I have done the red carpet hosting for all of his movies, and they just asked me to do it for the next one that's coming up. And what I mean by that is we bring the cameras and we live stream, and I'm the guy standing there in the suit interviewing Dr. Greer and interviewing all the other people. And it's really kind of cool, and I'm really super stoked that he offered to bring me back for that. He's done significant work, but sometimes in my opinion, the work is significant. It's good, but there's also a lot of, well, you have to believe it this way, or you're just not tuned in. And I'm not I don't think that we need to be that stringent, but I respect Dr. Greer a lot, and I'm super stoked that he's having me back, although maybe now not, but we'll see.
What about his witnesses? All the people that were he tried to get briefings at Washington and so forth.
He's had his day in DC, and we know about, because we're talking to some of the same people, so we know what's going on, and the involvement there now. And, now everybody's running to put together how we're going to protect whistleblowers, because there's whistleblower protection in this legislation. So MUFON has actually hired whistleblower attorneys. And if anybody is a genuine whistleblower, they come to MUFON. We have an infrastructure in place to protect them as we navigate this. Because what's happening is, sure, there's this new law, but nobody knows how it's going to unfold. Nobody knows how it's going to play. But I can tell you something, that there are a number of people that are already lined up that want to tell their story. And some of them are very, very significant. And so once the legalities are done, Lue Elizondo is very involved in this process and with these people, and he's working on his own doc that's going to come out and probably put icing on the cake on mine. But as soon as it's all worked out for these people, you're going to see testimony behind closed doors. You're going to see testimony in the public, and you're going to see a lot more disclosure. Right now, it's all just the logistics of how does this work? How do we protect these people? What are the true legal definitions of what they can say and what they can't say? And then once that's done, there's going to be some people coming forward to talk to Congress. It's absolutely going to happen. And we're talking about serious people that we know stuff, guys like potentially Eric Davis is going to be able to say a lot more than he said. Some of these scientists studying some of this stuff that we know have studied materials and debris. So it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, maybe you'll get some deathbed confessions along the way too, right? People that don't need the lawyers because they're on their way out.
Well, you'd wonder why we don't have those now. And I think when you're read into these programs, one of the things that I've grown to suspect is that it's not always easy to force somebody to do something. I could say, Miguel, you better keep this a secret, or I'll run over your dog. But it's hard to force people to do that. But it's a lot easier to get them to go along with the program. In this case, keeping information classified, if they truly understand why it has to be that way.
Oh,
and
true.
One example that I'll make is look what happened to Marco Rubio. Oh yeah, UFOs. Right. Oh yeah. He gets pulled behind closed doors in that hearing after the public congressional hearings, and I don't think I've heard him say a word about it since. And nobody came out of those hearings talking. Not even saying, "Oh yeah, we were presented with some very compelling stuff." Nobody said anything. Nobody said a word. And when Kirsten Gillibrand chaired these last hearings, we know she just played so, like, for lack of a better word, she just played a certain level of not knowing about any of this stuff. But we know she knows about this stuff because we've briefed her and we've shown her this stuff, and she knows the story and she knows what's going on. And I don't want to get MUFON in trouble with our friends in Congress, but why we did issue an official press release after that saying, we know better than this and we need more transparency. But that was as far as we could go. I was with Alan Steinfeld live during the hearings doing his show. And I was just like shaking my head. I'm like, this is so hard to watch. Here's this scientist, a credible scientist, sitting here talking about, well, yes, we're going to form this program and we have these things. This is a guy that has just been put into a brand new custom silo and nobody's telling him anything, and they're dropping UFO pictures on him. and clearly he hasn't been read in, or if he has, he's a better, actor than he is a scientist. And so it's baffling what we're seeing. Lord. Accidental Truth. I joke because it came out the day before the hearings. I said, well, you can watch Accidental Truth, then you watch the Senate hearings, and then you can figure out who to believe.
Too much. It's awesome.
Funny.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, as we get to the end, I wanted to ask you maybe one last sort of more relaxed question. What are your top 5 UFO films? Not documentaries, just films.
Well, see, now if I don't mention my friends, I'm going to get in trouble.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
Well, I mean, the granddaddy of them all.
You can give us 10 if you want and include your friends.
The granddaddy of them all, undeniably, Chariots of the Gods. Mm-hmm. The first and only mainstream theatrical UFO movie ever. Completely broke ground. Became one of the best-selling books of all time.
Yeah.
So Eric Von Däniken, and hey, Eric, him and I have had this conversation, will be the all-time king of those UFO documentaries. The best one ever, the most relevant, the most impactful, the most groundbreaking, and the most widely distributed. So hands down to Eric. James did a fantastic job on The Phenomenon. Absolutely fantastic. I like mine. I put it in the top 5. In fact, right now on the Apple charts, let me look. It's really funny. James and I have been texting back and forth and kind of picking on each other. Yeah, on the Apple chart, which is the top documentaries in the world based on iTunes.
Yeah, yeah.
James is at number 1 with Moment of Contact. He's at number 3 with The Phenomenon, and I'm at number 4 with Accidental Truth.
Awesome.
And so we've been texting back and forth with each other, kind of like, I'm like, James, man, keep that spot warm for me, but don't stay too long. So it's you know, and I was joking around with Carolyn Corey came over last night, and she's done some amazing stuff. A Tear in the Sky is one of her recent ones, and I think that definitely deserves attention. So for sure for that one. So that's 4, right? Yeah, that's 4.
What about Hollywood movies?
Well, you know, they're not UFO documentaries. Mm-hmm. I think Ancient Aliens and the people at Prometheus, as much as the ufologists trash them, that show has got to be recognized for what it is. And Kevin Burns did so much to move this field forward and never got credit for it. He was never, very rarely speaking at conferences. Nobody knew who he was. He's got to be the unsung hero of UFO related media, even if the show has its sensationalistic aspects. Yeah. It's a TV show, but Ancient Aliens has made a huge contribution.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
So yeah, I mean, James's films are always good. He's a pioneer. I've made a couple, but I don't, if people are telling me, and you said it, that Accidental Truth is one of the best UFO docs you've ever seen. I just love hearing that. But on the other side of it, I'm not going to. My phone just decided to talk. I'm not getting egoed out about that because I don't want to be humbled afterwards. But a lot of people have said that, and if it's true, then I'm just very, very proud of having done it.
Yeah, good job. And yeah, we needed it. It had to be done, and it had to be you, Ron. It's as simple as that. So destiny, the stars were aligned, and we're very happy for that. So, but yeah, I think we're at the end. For those of you in the chat, as always, very interesting questions, very interesting discussions. Vance, thanks for keeping us company.
Oh, glad to fly in,
Hey, thank you for your feedback on the film. And, everybody out there, it was only available for purchase until yesterday, but now you can rent it for as little as $5. So
I think I saw it at $3.99 on Amazon. But
I think that's for their prices fluctuate. But you know what? Here's the thing:
the algorithm changes the prices depending.
Obviously, I spent a lot of money to make the film, but I didn't do it for money, and I just want everybody to see it. And so I want it to be accessible to everybody. Hopefully, it doesn't get bootlegged before I get my money back. But one last thing. You want to see something funny?
Well, Chester already has a copy, so you can.
Guys in the audience, if you Google Accidental Truth T-shirt, you are going to see that there are hundreds of people who have stolen my movie poster and are selling it on T-shirts online. And we have our own factory for making T-shirts. So if you want to support the film that way, we've got a great line of swag. We have the can I do a plug?
Of course, please do. Yeah.
So we have a very small number of Accidental Truth movie posters that are autographed by Matthew Modine and myself that you can get. And some of the proceeds of this stuff is going to help the animation team in Ukraine because they all lost their computers during the war. We have the Accidental Truth mouse pad, which, everybody needs one of these. And then we have the coffee mugs. We have the T-shirt. The Accidental Truth T-shirt is so cool that thousands of people are stealing it and selling it online. So if you go to Accidental Truths with an S, you can get the swag, accidentaltruths with an S.com. And if you Google Accidental Truth T-shirt, there's more people selling the T-shirt than I think watched the movie so far. It's frightening.
Oh, interesting. Well, this is very
Did you do it? Isn't it awful? I mean, every one of them has just stolen my art off the website and put it on T-shirts. It's actually Chester. It's Accidental Truths with an S.com. Accidentaltruths.com. And the T-shirts are awesome. And every one of these T-shirts, I own the machine that manufactures them. Every one of these is handmade by me. So I made the movie, and I'm the guy making the T-shirts because I just feel like just another way to connect with people. So when you get one from our website, you're getting an original, actually made by my own hands.
Yeah, and
Very
if you
cool.
get caught with a bootleg, you'll be abducted on the spot.
Yeah. The attorneys are like, don't worry about it right now. We'll go after it later. But right now, I mean, it's just helping to make making the movie more famous. But
free publicity, and if
I never expected that. I spent like 20 grand on this whole setup to make T-shirts because after I made the movie, I just didn't want to sit in front of the computer all the time for another year. So I set up a couple little side businesses involved actually having to move my body and not be plugged in, and making T-shirts and mouse pads and stuff was one of them. And so when I found all these people ripping off the T-shirts on the internet, all I could do is shake my head. It's awful.
Well, it's a trend. It's hitting somewhere. It might end up on TikTok and 1 million people watch it. So yeah, you never know how these things go. So
yeah, so there's only 250 of the signed posters. They all come with a picture of Matthew signing them and a certificate of authenticity. I think we have about 100 and something left. And
very cool. Very cool.
And like I said, I'm not trying to make money off the merchandise. I'm trying to help out the guys in Ukraine because they stayed with this movie literally through hell. And one day you get a videotape of a missile flying over the guy's house, and the next day maybe you get a finished animation shot. It was rough. I felt so bad for them. One of the guys had to go do civil defense at the very beginning of the war. He was gone for 3 months. I didn't know if he was dead or alive. Wow. And so that whole crisis over there hit home for this production.
Wow. Well, I will have it on the show notes, both when the YouTube video comes out in a few minutes when we're done, and tomorrow when we put out the audio version, iTunes, Spotify, and all that. I'll make sure I'll put the link there. So if you guys see the link, click it and support Accidental Truth and all those creators who have helped make this a thing and help them out in some really hard times. So, but
I genuinely hope that people out there enjoy the film. It means a lot to me to be able to have made it. It's like I feel blessed.
Yes, it's a great film. Highly recommend it. And yes, Ron, thank you very much for coming. We, of course, look forward to a future conversation. Anytime you want to come on the show, let us know. It's been a blast. It's been enlightening. And good night, everyone. Good night, Ron. And thanks, everybody, for coming.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Ron.
Hope you enjoy the film. Thanks, Chester. I appreciate it.
Chester rules.
Chester stocked up. I'll send you
everyone.
a picture of me making your shirt.
Yes.
Love
There
it.
you go.
All right. Take care, everyone.
All right.